Welcome to Season 11, Episode 13 of the Ubuntu podcast. It's Tuesday the 28th of May. No, it's not. It's Tuesday the 29th of May. We're going to discuss what's been happening in the news and the community. I'm Martin, and joining me this week are Mark.
Hello.
Hello, Mark. And Alan.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. So, Mark, in the chronicles of destroying and rebuilding your bathroom, where are things right now?
Nearly done, but I went away for the bank holiday weekend to Devon.
That seems sensible.
Yes, they're in a state of mostly doneness until I take some more time off work and finish up all the last few bits.
So what did you get up to in Devon?
We went and stayed in a house with a bunch of my friends from university, and we played board games and played Mario Kart and went to Exmouth and ate ice cream and generally made merry.
Which board games did you play?
We played Betrayal at the House on the Hill, Elder Sign, and Joking Hazard.
Huh. Never heard of any of those.
No, neither have I. Sounds like a brilliant distraction to working on your bathroom, though. Did you have fun?
Yes. Joking Hazard is, if you've ever seen the online cartoon comic strip, rather, Cyanide and Happiness.
Yes.
Yes, it's basically a game where you make up little comics of that from individual cards.
Is it like Cards Against Humanity with cartoon strips?
Yes.
I think I've seen photos of people putting together fun cartoon strips. Oh, that's rather cool. I like that.
It's very fun.
Is
it's not family friendly at
NSFW?
all.
Right, okay. I thought it might be. But see, the thing is, my pool of people I can play games with is mostly consists of my children. So I have to choose carefully which games we buy.
Yes. Yeah. And Elder Sign is H.P. Lovecraft kind of game where you've got to... It's mostly based on chance. You've got to roll dice in certain combinations to beat challenges and not get the world destroyed by elder gods, which, always good. And what was the other one? Oh, Betrayal at House on the Hill it's a sort of co-op game where you're exploring a haunted house, but then at some point, one of you, and you don't know who it's going to be until it happens, turns against the rest of the group. And there's like 50 different scenarios that might happen depending on when the person is revealed.
Ah,
it's good fun. It's
that does sound good. I like the sound of that.
I like those games where someone is, there's one person in the group who is the baddie or whatever, and you have to try and figure it out. It's like Secret Hitler. It's quite a similar take on that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's a Battlestar Galactica game where it's kind of like that. Someone is a Cylon, and you've got to work out who the Cylon is before they destroy the ship. But one of my friends was playing it, and they set it up wrong, and they were all Cylons, and no one knew that everyone else was a Cylon.
Are these old Cylons or new pretty Cylons?
I think they were probably new pretty Cylons because they were blending in with the humans.
They didn't have to say things like "by your command" and stuff like that. And make the stupid swooshy noises.
Oh, it's 1977 all over again.
It is.
Right then, talking about it being 1977 all over again, Alan, how is your journey going back in time through computing history? You back to like the CPC 464 yet? Or
Yeah, actually, I sent my CPC 464 off in a box to a YouTuber, a guy called Neil, who is otherwise known as Retro Man Cave. I packed my 464 off because he said it was one of the things he was missing. And I've often watched YouTubers and thought, God, a lot of these YouTubers like LGR and 8-Bit Guy and Retro Man Cave, people send them stuff and they record videos of like stuff unboxed. What kind of lunatic sends these people free stuff? And then we were chatting on his Discord, and he said, "Oh yeah, CPC 464 is one of the ones I haven't got." And I thought, "Hang on a minute, I've got like 3 of them in the loft. He can surely have one of mine." So I then became one of those people, and I started putting all kinds of extra stuff in there, like copies of Amstrad Action and old. And I said, what computer games did you play on the 464 back in the past? And he went, "Oh, I've played this and that." And I said, "Oh, I think I might have some of those." Dug through my box, had half a dozen of them, shoved those in the box as well.
What's a CPC 464, please?
It's an 8-bit micro from the same era as the Sinclair Spectrum and the Commodore 64. It was the third one, made by Amstrad.
The also ran.
Yeah, but to those who had one, they felt it was technically superior. It was better built than the Spectrum.
Okay, and good enough for you to have 3 in the loft.
Yes, and it lasted for quite a while. They're robust machines. But I've now given it away.
Yeah. And anyway, we now know two nutters that send YouTubers stuff for free, because I also put a box in the post to the same YouTube channel. So that will make interesting viewing in the weeks to come, I'm sure. Anything else you've been up to you want to share with us?
Yeah, I first started building a 3D printer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got one for my birthday. I knew I was getting one because I put it on my wish list. And Claire said, "Do you want a bike or a 3D printer for your birthday?" And I was like, "Well, if you buy me a bike, I'm going to buy the 3D printer anyway. So get me a 3D printer." So I got that, and I just started making. That was like a couple of months ago, and then I started building it this weekend. And
what's involved in building a 3D printer?
Well, it depends which one you buy, because there are thousands of them, and some of them come like half built and you just like put it together. Others, you have a box of screws and a box of metal parts and a box of plastic parts. And mine is mostly acrylic and metal, and you peel the layer off the acrylic of all the pieces. So I employed Claire to sit with me at the table. It was very therapeutic to peel all the backing off of the acrylic, and then I started screwing it all together. But I was watching a YouTube video of a guy who's building one live streaming. He was live streaming it, but this was a recording of the live stream, and the recording is 4 hours 45 minutes long for building this thing. And I've got, I think, 2 hours into it, and I've actually got the thing built. So it's now built. I've got to tidy up the wiring and add a couple of bits and pieces, but it's one of these ones where you can just keep adding and changing and modifying and upgrading. And there are upgrade parts all over the internet that you can add on to make it better and faster and smoother and quieter and more precise and, you know, more easily controllable and stuff. So it's really a base platform on which you build a better 3D printer. So
interesting. I shall look forward to hearing more about your 3D printing exploits in the future.
Oh, don't worry. I'm going to be one of those 3D printer people who bore people to death about 3D printers. They're totally going to be me.
Brilliant. Right, well, let's save us from the 3D printing. Shall we move on?
Yep.
Right, well, now it's time for some news. So, Alan, what did you find in the news that took your fancy this week?
I saw an article in the news that was titled "The FBI Tells Everybody to Reboot Their Router," or router, probably they would have said. And
why would you want to reboot a woodworking instrument? I don't understand.
Ludicrous. I'd have to turn it on first. So this was all about some exploit that's been doing the rounds on the internet, and apparently it means that many home routers, typical home routers, the kind of things that people have in their home or small home offices, something like 500,000 of them have been compromised by a bit of malware called VPN Filter. And they've been advising everyone to go around and reboot their routers, which partially removes it. It doesn't completely remove it, but it gets rid of it at that point in time. And there's a couple of lengthy articles I don't fully understand about how this all works. But what it just struck me as strange that they must know about lots of these things. But on this occasion, they decided to tell everyone about it. Like, we know through the stuff that Ed Snowden has released and stuff that's appeared through WikiLeaks and so on, that the governmental organizations and these secret services and so on know about all these different malwares, and they use them in some ways. Maybe this one outlived its usefulness or wasn't particularly useful to them, or maybe just because it was used by a different government than them. I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe it interfered with their own surveilling.
Right, yeah. You need to reboot to finish the install of ours, which will get rid of theirs. It just struck me as a strange thing to see on the news, was you should reboot your router on, like, you know, the main 10 o'clock news. That seemed really weird. I've never seen that before.
Do either of you reboot your Wi-Fi routers routinely?
Not routinely.
No, not as a matter of course. Only if something goes wrong or the power goes out.
Right, so you daddy pig it if something goes wrong.
Well, no, I try and debug it if I can.
Yeah, you avoid it.
Yeah, I try not to, but sometimes, I mean, I know there's bugs in things because I'm using one of the free software routing software platforms that you put on top of a domestic router.
Oh, you're probably fine. There's no need for you to reboot your router then.
Well, no, I'm sure there probably is because, you know, I don't necessarily keep it up to date, so I don't know. Maybe it is.
For shame.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah. Well, you know, this this did get me thinking. See, it did trigger the thought process that actually, of all the things in the house, the entry point into my network is the one that I don't manage as well as all the others, right?
Yeah.
And it is the gateway to everything. And I think I'm tempted to use something that I'm a bit more familiar with updating, because updating these things is a little bit tricksy, because they're MIPS CPUs and the software is a little bit opaque to me, and it's yet another thing to learn. I'm thinking about getting something that's x86 based with multiple network
Could you
interfaces.
do some sort of Ubuntu core
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
snaps thing?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And then
That'd be nice to have like a nice like documented way of here's how to make your own router.
Yeah, but I would need to be careful that it didn't just update itself like midway through me using it. So I'd need some way of making sure that I could control, when it updates, like when the house is asleep or something like that. But equally, I like the idea that it keeps up to date. So might have to look at. I have seen some x86 boards that have like 5 Ethernet ports, but they look quite expensive. But it's something I might consider. I'd be interested to know if any of our listeners have done that and rolled their own router.
Yeah, so specifically here, you're looking for taking a commodity Linux distribution and turning it into a router rather than taking some specialized routing or networking distribution.
I'm not really interested in Lead or OpenWRT or any of the others or the BSD based ones. I can't remember what it's called.
Obviously, being Ubuntu podcast, we would like it if it was Ubuntu something that you've turned into a router.
But I know people have used Debian and
that will do too.
Yeah, similar guides. But something that I could manage in the same way as I manage every other device in the house makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting project actually. It's finding a device that's got more than one Ethernet port. That's the trick.
Yeah, they do exist. I know. I know.
Yeah, you tend to pay a bit more for that, though.
Yes, our glorious sponsor Bitfolk. I know Andy uses them, so I might have to tap him up and find out which one he's using. He was using one from a company called Sokeris, I think it's called. I probably butchered the name, but something like that. But yeah, I'd be interested to know what our listeners think. What's next?
Well, as the lead gamer on the team, I'm going to totally own that title now, by the way. I noticed in the news that PUBG is suing Epic Games over the similarities between Epic's Fortnite and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
Why are they suing them?
Well, herein lies the whole mystification behind this claim, because they claim that on copyright grounds, Fortnite are encroaching on PUBG's copyright, and I feel that they're on a very, very thin ice in being able to prove this. So they're basically stating that Fortnite's Battle Royale mode violates the copyright of PUBG.
Wow.
Now, yeah.
That's one hell of a claim.
Isn't it? Isn't it just? Because since when did copying or cloning game mechanics infringe copyright? Hasn't this been going on since the dawn of computer games ever? And also, this is not exclusive to games, right? The whole idea of seeing something's popular.
Well, yes. Surely Battle Royale is infringing Battle Royale's copyright.
Quite. So I find this utterly bemusing, and I feel like it's sour grapes.
I can kind of see why, because for a long time PUBG has been number one on Steam. If you look at number of people playing, for a long time before PUBG came along, Dota 2 was like the number one game. You always see millions of players constantly playing Dota 2. And now there's millions of players constantly playing PUBG at any time of day or night. Obviously it goes in peaks and troughs, but at any time of day or night, there's millions of people around the world playing PUBG. It's insanely popular. And Fortnite has eaten into that, especially in the younger demographic. The fact that Fortnite has the creative element in that you can build constructions where in PUBG you can't. So you can build defenses in Fortnite where you can't in PUBG. You just have to use whatever is in the map. But also the cartoony nature of the graphics of Fortnite and some of the fun stuff like the emotes. The characters can do these little dances, when you want to celebrate a win or something. Makes it really popular with a younger demographic. When I talk to the kids and their friends, they all take the mick out of me for playing PUBG because I'm not one of the cool kids playing Fortnite, because they all play Fortnite now.
So, but basically, what you're saying is Fortnite takes the battle royale game mechanic and does it better, and PUBG are upset that somebody has stolen their crown.
Gamer phrase is salty.
Yes, I think that is exactly the right term. And I think this is dangerous ground, because you can't copyright an idea, an expression. If PUBG had something that was very specific to their game,
so
then
if you actually
that would be fair.
If you look at the legal documents, and this was covered a little while ago on Leonard French, everyone's favourite copyright attorney on YouTube, he covered this and went through page by page the legal documents, and it shows side-by-side screenshots of the game, and it shows some of the guns, the weapons. It shows even things like there's a frying pan, which is one of the weapons you can find, and that's even the same shape, and it looks like.
But frying pans have been used as a melee weapon in games long before PUBG was ever a thing.
Right. And so there are lots of other things. That's just one. It's a massive document of all the screenshots of characters, textures, building styles.
Hang on a minute. But PUBG is a game that's constructed with store-bought assets from the Unreal Asset Store. So I think they're also on a very thin wedge there, claiming, visual similarities based on the fact they didn't create that visual style for themselves. They've curated it based on store-bought assets.
Right, and I'm not siding with either of them. I think the whole thing is completely ludicrous. Oh, you think Fortnite are okay?
I think Fortnite are doing what has happened in games history forever, which is taking a popular concept and doing it better, or trying to do the best they can with it, or embellishing around the edges of it in order to try and ride the current trend. That's nothing different. When Gauntlet came out in the arcades, there was a butt ton of Gauntlet clones, on every platform unimaginable.
Yeah, 3 years ago it was all Minecraft clones.
Exactly,
and mobile. It's but the thing is, there is often someone who feels that they have the right, that they led the way in a particular genre, and they feel that they have the right. Like Spry Games are exceptionally litigious on mobile. If you make a match 3 game, if you make a match 3 where you match 3 items, they collect together, and then they make a 4th item, and then you match 3 of those and it makes a 5th item. Spry, Fox, I think they're called, have gone after anyone who makes a match 3 game on mobile, because they feel they own that space. And it's difficult, because that doesn't lead to innovation in that space.
Well, that's exactly. Yeah, and also that's more in line with patent infringement if you own a patent on something, rather than the expression of a game mechanic or an idea.
We shall keep an eye on this, I think.
We will. Yeah. Mark, what have you been observing in the news this week?
Well, the glorious day is upon us. GDPR has arrived.
Oh,
and there was
what's
much rejoicing. Well, for those listeners who don't use email, GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation, which has come into force in the European Union and affects any company who has customers in the European Union, which is basically a tightening of the rules around use of personal data and the consent required to process and store personal data, and the fines associated with not doing it right.
And they're quite significant, aren't they? It's not just a slap on the wrist. It's a chunky amount of cash if you...
It's 20 million euros or 4% of global revenue.
Turnover. Yeah. Yes. So it's I mean, a lot of it, if you look at existing, certainly in the UK, if you look at existing data protection laws, a lot of the responsibilities and the rights are very much the same as they already were. But the difference is that now people take them more seriously because they don't want to get enormous fines.
People are dealing with this differently, though, aren't they?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there seems to be certainly. I mean, a lot of people have been making jokes about the emails because every company who has some sort of record of your email address has been emailing you in one way or another. And the two main approaches seem to be: here's our new privacy policy, read it, please, and we'll assume unless you tell us otherwise that it's okay. And the other one is we're not going to send you emails anymore unless you explicitly resubscribe to our email list and say that we can.
Right.
Which is interesting that there's the two different approaches because obviously people's lawyers are giving them different advice as to what's okay.
It's a very open-ended bit of legislation, unfortunately.
The thing that's interesting that I found is for people who don't have your email address, where you are just visiting and consuming content on their website, they're all doing different things. They either smack you in the face with a dialogue that tells you all the different types of cookies that they've got and which ones you have to opt into, with a little selection, a set of radio buttons you choose, or checkboxes to choose which ones you want and don't want. Others have not really done anything but pop a little banner up that you just say okay, and it just says just click this, and this will all go away and you can forget all about it. Whereas USA Today went the other way, and they had a special version of their website for Europe which turned off all the tracking scripts and ads. So
and it was really fast, and it was about 10% of the download size of the full site.
It was tiny.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Wasn't it like 500k for the European version and 5 meg for the regular version?
Exactly.
Yeah, and the only difference was all of the cruft that tracks your behaviour was removed.
Yeah.
That's telling, isn't it? Wow.
Yes.
So
has this affected either of you in your day-to-day work? Have you had to do anything to make sure that your work is complying with GDPR?
Not specifically what we're doing, I don't think, no. But I know that a few people have been suggesting that maybe Ubuntu / Canonical need to look at what we're doing with the telemetry reports in the installer with regards to GDPR. And I only bring that up just to sort of as a point of education, because there is no personally identifiable information in those telemetry reports, or in fact system identifiable information, uniquely identifiable information in those system reports. They don't fall under the GDPR net.
Yes. There's been some interesting stuff going around in my job, because Moodle, the platform I develop on, has basically implemented a whole new privacy API specifically for managing this stuff a lot better. So the way that Moodle is developed is that there's a core which provides the APIs and the basic structure, and then everything else is developed as plugins. And what they've done is they've developed a framework for plugin developers to say, this is the personal data this plugin will store about a user and why. And then users can basically click a button which says, give me all of my data. And if that's approved, it will go out into all the plugins and find all the data and pull it together. And then it can either be given to them or deleted, depending on what their request was. So, there's quite a lot of work for us to do in implementing all of that to ensure that any requests that come in can be dealt with easily. But it's really interesting to see how seriously they've taken this and how much time and effort they've invested in making it easy for developers to have a way of complying in the long run.
Yeah, nobody can afford to be found foul of this particular ruling, except for Interflora, apparently, who continue to send me emails. Before we move on to the community events, Alan, you've got one last story, I believe.
Yeah, we got a little announcement crossed my desk from Roger Light, developer of the open source Mosquito messaging system. He's announced that he's quitting his current role at, I think it's Nottingham University, to work on Mosquito part-time, which is sponsored by a company called Sedalo. I think that's how you pronounce it. But the thing that's interesting for me, he's a listener to the show, so hello, Roger. But the interesting thing is he got the idea for creating this open source product at OggCamp back in 2009, when Andy Stanford Clark was giving a talk, and he mentioned a server component he was using, MQTT-based thing, and I think it was me that asked him, is that open source? And Andy said no, but it would be good if someone did make an open source server, and that's what triggered Roger to have the idea, I should make an open source MQTT server. So he developed Mosquito, and he's been developing it for years.
Awesome.
And now He's got a changing career, a new job out of.
And it's all thanks to you.
Well, all thanks
Or
to
Ogcamp.
Ogcamp, I think, would be
Yes.
better.
Yes. And it was also used as part of Facebook Messenger at one point, wasn't it?
Was it really?
Yes, I'm sure I remember us seeing at one point there was they had a thing in the open source licenses section. It might have been back when it was still using XMPP as the protocol. But yeah, there was one of the licenses was the Mosquito license and copyright notice.
Nice.
Well, I'll just say it's ubiquitous because I know some of our listeners love it when I say ubiquitous.
Okay. Is that all the news?
Yeah, the community news next, I think. Samantha? And I saw in the news this week that Dell have announced a whole lineup of precision laptops running Ubuntu.
Ooh.
Yeah, so 4 new machines. One is available now. Here they all are. You ready for this? It's numbers ahoy. It's the Dell Precision 3530. Is a 15-inch mobile workstation. That's the one you can get now. And then there's the 5530, which is a 15-inch workstation. The 7530, which is another 15-inch. And then the 7730, which is a 17-inch workstation. And those last 3 will all be available soon, but they're not available right now.
And these are all beefy machines, aren't
Yeah, they are. They're really quite good. So they're all 8th gen Intel devices, and they've all got NVIDIA Quadro Pro graphics cards in them with varying amounts of, CUDA cores and RAM. Some of them are able to accommodate Xeon processors, up to 32 gigabytes of memory, and all the NVMe goodness and USB-C, all the current stuff. It's pretty amazing. So,
Review coming soon, maybe?
well, let's hope so. So, Barton, we know you listen. All 4, please. Thank you very much. Maybe 3 to keep.
Next up, there's a post on the Ubuntu Fridge about nominations being open for the Ubuntu Technical Board. So the Technical Board is a group of individuals within the Ubuntu community who decide things like the package policy, the standards that packages must comply to before they can go into what we call Ubuntu, release goals, and selection of which packages go into Ubuntu as well. So the policy and the packages. They don't get down necessarily into the absolute nitty-gritty of what goes on the CD in all cases, because that's delegated down to developers, but they help in the decision-making process. And so the people who sit on the technical board, one of those people is Mark Shuttleworth, and a bunch of other people who have been around the Ubuntu community for a long time and know a lot about the ins and outs of how the products work. And there's been a call for nominations, which lasts until I think the 6th of June, so for the next week or so. And there's details we'll put in the show notes about how you can get in touch, but it's open to people who are active in the Ubuntu community, developers really, who have a good understanding of the nuances of how Ubuntu works and how it's put together. Looking for nominations for the board.
Mark.
Next up, the Ubuntu Membership Board has established a new policy for people to rejoin the project as an Ubuntu member. So this is if you previously were an Ubuntu member, which you can be given that status basically by having a significant and sustained contribution to the project or the community in some way. Not necessarily in terms of code. This can be all sorts of things. So if you were an Ubuntu member, but you've lapsed or you've stopped contributing and you're coming back to the project, they've established a new policy to allow you to rejoin without having to go through the whole process that you had to go through initially, basically by outlining sort of what you're doing now and how you're going to be involved in the project in the future.
Because what actually happens is you get an email a couple of weeks before, because it renews every 2 years automatically.
Yeah.
But you have to press a button in Launchpad, and if the email gets sent to you and you don't deal with it, then after a week or so you get removed as an Ubuntu member, and so the benefits that you get as an Ubuntu member and your ubuntu.com email address and that disappear. And so some people move on from the project and go and do other things, and that's fair enough. And then they come back later and they say, well, I was a member, can I be a member again? Depending upon how long you've been away, and whether you're still doing sustained and significant contributions, you can get that membership back, or just go through the process again. But it's good to have that cleared up.
Yep. And last up, LG have released a 38-inch curved monitor that has a Ryzen CPU inside it, and it supports Ubuntu.
What?
So you say a curved monitor, it's an all-in-one?
Yes, I think it is an all-in-one. It's an all-in-one sold with no OS, with
okay.
Ubuntu being one of the supported operating systems.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's an ultra-wide display, and at 38-inch, and it has a dual-core AMD Ryzen with Vega graphics and 8 gigs of RAM, and 128 gig SSD, which is blank by default, but LG lists Ubuntu 16.04 as an officially supported operating system.
Nice.
So now you can go and hack your telly.
So are we going to try and get one of them to send one of them to us?
Oh, yeah, that's a brilliant idea. I hadn't thought of that.
LG.
Yes, let's totally do that. I need a new monitor as well, actually.
No, you don't.
Awkward. And last, we have an event. Mark, what is our event?
Yes, it is, of course, OggCamp. It's happening on the 18th and 19th of August 2018 at Sheffield Hallam University in Sheffield in the UK. And the news this week is that the event has been awarded a .everyone Fairer Tech Event grant, which is a grant which was run by, advertised by the .everyone group, which is about inclusivity in technology. And they were offering some money for tech events to do things to improve the inclusivity of their event. And so OggCamp's going to be using the money to run a Coder Dojo event alongside the main speaker track to give a broader range of people something to do while they're there. We've spoken before about the idea of running a Sprog camp where we have something for kids going on. So this is sort of a good first try at getting something like that going.
That's excellent. And if you're new to the podcast and you're wondering what an OggCamp is, go to oggcamp.org. And if you're in the UK or Europe and you want to come along in August, then go and sign up. I've heard from some of our friends in French France that they're going to be coming to OggCamp this year. And that's all for the news and events.
We can never have too much feedback. Reading your feedback means that we have to come up with less content. So if you're a Redditor, you can comment on our shows through our subreddit, /r/Ubuntu podcast.
Wow, and there it is. Another episode out the door, just like that. That was easy, wasn't it, chaps?
Seamless, yes.
Oh, good show. Right, what are we doing next week?
We're going to finally review the KDE Slim book that I've had for like 2 months or so. In fact, I'm recording this show on that laptop right now.
Excellent.
Next week's on it as well.
So tune back in next week for the KDE Slim Book review, and you can find us on @Ubuntu Podcast on Twitter in the meantime, or ubuntupodcast.org/Telegram if you want to have a chat.